5. Marcus Aurelius, Mindset Lessons for Inner Peace. Imagine this. You wake up to the sound of your phone buzzing, endless notifications flooding in, messages demanding your attention, news headlines screaming of conflict, disaster, and outrage. Before you even step out of bed, your mind is already on fire, caught between yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's worries. You reach for distractions, you seek comfort in routine, yet still a gnawing unease lingers inside. It feels as if peace is always slipping away, just beyond your grasp. Now, picture a man who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, surrounded not by digital noise, but by the raw chaos of existence. He was an emperor, carrying the weight of an empire that stretched across continents. He commanded armies on distant frontiers, while plagues ravaged his people. Betrayal and conspiracy brewed in the Senate halls. Each day he awoke not to the comfort of quiet certainty, but to the storm of endless responsibility, criticism, and danger. Yet in the midst of that storm, Marcus Aurelius found a stillness that could not be broken. How is that possible? How could a man burdened with more troubles than any of us could bear write words of such calm, such clarity, such peace? When he put his pen to the pages of his private journal, what we now call meditations, he was not writing for the world. He was not seeking applause, approval, or recognition. He was writing to himself, to remind his own restless spirit of truths that anchored him against fear and despair. These words, meant for no one else, became timeless wisdom for everyone who struggles to live with serenity in a turbulent world. The question, then, is simple. If Marcus Aurelius could find peace surrounded by enemies, plagued by disease, and burdened with an empire, why can't we find peace in our daily lives? What stops us from standing unshaken when life shakes us? Why do we, with far fewer burdens, crumble under the weight of small inconveniences, fleeting insults, or the opinions of strangers? I speak to you now as a fellow traveler on this path, not as one who has mastered it, but as one who seeks it daily. For the truth is that inner peace is not a gift handed to us. It is a discipline, a mindset, a way of living. And Marcus Aurelius, through his own struggles, left us lessons that endure across centuries. These lessons are not abstract theories. They are practical weapons against fear, anxiety, and despair. They are reminders that peace is not found in escaping life, but in facing it with courage and wisdom. So I ask you, do you want to live a life where every storm shakes you to your core, or do you want to learn the art of standing firm, untroubled, serene, even when the world turns upside down? The choice is before you now. The teachings of Marcus Aurelius are not for scholars in dusty libraries. They are for you, for your mornings when doubt clouds your mind, for your nights when worry robs you of rest, for your days when the world seems cruel and chaotic. Today, I will share with you 5 of his most powerful mindset lessons. If you take them seriously, if you make them part of your life, they can change the way you experience the world. You may not control everything around you. In fact, you will never control everything around you, but you can control how you respond. You can find peace where others find only pain. You can be still where others are shaken. This is the hidden strength of the Stoic mind, the quiet fire that Marcus Aurelius carried within him, and it is waiting for you to claim it as your own. Marcus Aurelius was not born into an easy life. Though history remembers him as the last of the 5 good emperors, his youth was marked by responsibility, study, and the relentless weight of expectation. From a young age, he was groomed for leadership, immersed in philosophy, trained in discipline, and shaped by mentors who recognized a rare quality in him, a hunger for wisdom rather than power. Unlike many rulers who sought glory through conquest, Marcus was drawn to philosophy, to the quiet pursuit of truth that could guide a man through both triumph and disaster. When he ascended to the throne, Rome was not a serene empire basking in stability. It was a vast, fragile structure straining under its own weight. Rebellions threatened at its edges. Barbarian tribes pressed at its borders, and within the capital, corruption and scheming gnawed at the Senate. And then came the Antonine Plague, one of the deadliest pandemics of antiquity, sweeping through the empire, taking countless lives, leaving devastation in its wake. Imagine leading an empire where each day brought news of another loss, another uprising, another wave of sickness. Most men would have collapsed under the pressure. Yet Marcus did not seek escape. He did not allow bitterness or despair to consume him. Instead, he turned inward to the one place no enemy, no plague, no betrayal could touch: his own mind. In the darkness of his tent while on campaign, or in the lonely hours of the night while others slept, Marcus would write. He would take up his stylus and scratch out reminders to himself, words not crafted for the world, but for his own weary soul. These writings became meditations, a collection unlike any other in history. It is important to understand what meditations truly is. It is not a book of speeches to impress crowds, nor a carefully polished treatise designed to win disciples. It is a private journal filled with self-corrections, questions, and humble admissions. We are not reading the words of an untouchable emperor, but of a man reminding himself to stay calm, to stay just, to stay virtuous in the face of unimaginable trials. In these pages we see not the mask of authority, but the raw struggle of a human being determined to live with dignity. He constantly reminded himself of the transience of life. He wrote about death not with fear, but with acceptance. He spoke of power and fame as dust and ash, fleeting as the morning mist. He urged himself to rise above anger, above envy, above the petty desires that drag men into misery. He clung to the idea that a man's worth is measured not by what happens to him, but by how he chooses to respond. This was not theory for Marcus. This was survival. These were the thoughts that steadied his hand when the empire trembled. To grasp the weight of his words, we must imagine his world. Picture him on the battlefield, surrounded by weary soldiers, their faces lined with hunger and fear. He eats with them, sleeps among them, shares their struggles. Unlike many rulers, Marcus does not wall himself off in luxury. He lives with the army, enduring the cold, the mud, the uncertainty of each day. And in the stillness of night, by the flickering light of a lamp, he writes to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Even now, centuries later, his example challenges us. He was not a philosopher who spoke only from comfort. He was a man tested by suffering, writing words forged in the fire of reality. This is why his lessons endure. They were not made in the safety of ivory towers, but in the dust of war and the shadow of death. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that no amount of power, wealth, or status can shield us from life's storms. But he also shows us that within every storm there is an anchor, our own reason, our own virtue, our own inner peace. His life was proof that even an emperor, with all the burdens of the world on his shoulders, could choose calm over chaos, wisdom over impulse, and integrity over corruption. And this is why we turn to him now. Not because he was perfect, not because he had all the answers, but because he struggled as we struggle, and in that struggle he uncovered truths that speak to us across the ages. It is from this place, the meeting point of hardship and wisdom, that we draw the 5 mindset lessons that can still transform our lives today. The first lesson from Marcus Aurelius is as simple as it is revolutionary. Control the inner, accept the outer. At its heart lies the stoic recognition that most of what we fear, most of what troubles us, does not actually belong to us. It belongs to the world beyond our grasp. Circumstances, opinions, accidents, events that unfold without our permission. What does belong to us, however, is small but immeasurably powerful: our judgments, our choices, our actions. Marcus never tired of reminding himself that the mind is sovereign and that peace is born the moment we stop trying to rule what lies outside of us and begin mastering what lies within. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Notice the clarity of those words. They do not promise that the world will bend to our will. They do not suggest that discipline or intelligence will erase hardship. Instead, they strip away illusion. If you spend your life clinging to what you cannot hold, other people's opinions, the tides of fortune, the storms of nature, you will forever be dragged along like a prisoner. But if you turn inward and rule your own mind, then no storm, however violent, can overthrow you. Think of how often we let ourselves be enslaved by what we cannot control. A colleague insults us at work, and our peace is shattered. A stranger on the internet mocks us, and we stew in anger for hours. The weather changes, our plans are ruined, and frustration poisons the entire day. In each case, we hand over our serenity to forces beyond our command. Marcus would tell us, this is madness. Why give away the only thing that is truly yours, your mind, for the sake of things that were never yours in the first place? Imagine Marcus on campaign, leading men into uncertain battles. He cannot control the weather that turns roads into rivers of mud. He cannot control the enemy's next move. He cannot control the plague that creeps through the camps, stealing the lives of his soldiers. But he can control how he meets these trials. He can choose courage instead of despair, patience instead of rage, steadiness instead of panic. And by mastering himself, he becomes a steady flame for others in the darkness. The same is true for us. Life is full of events we would never choose: illness, failure, betrayal, disappointment. But within each event lies the choice of response. Will we curse fate, or will we face it with dignity? Will we lash out, or will we hold to reason? Marcus knew that the mind, once trained, becomes a fortress no storm can breach. How do we practice this lesson in our own time? Begin each morning with a simple exercise. Write down 2 columns. In the first, list what lies within your control. In the second, what does not. You will notice quickly that the second list is far longer. Weather, economy, politics, the moods of others. The first list is short: your thoughts, your words, your deeds. And yet that small list contains the only things that ever truly determine your peace. To dwell on the second list is to chain yourself to despair. To live in the first is to step into freedom. Consider also the art of reframing. A driver cuts you off on the road. Instead of raging, you can tell yourself, perhaps they are rushing to the hospital. A colleague interrupts you during a meeting. Instead of burning with resentment, you can remind yourself, this is my chance to practice patience. What once felt like a personal insult now becomes training ground for virtue. Every irritation becomes an invitation to mastery. Marcus often spoke of the universe as a great order, an unfolding tapestry beyond our comprehension. To demand that it obey us is foolish, but to align ourselves with its flow, to meet each event with the one power we do possess, our reasoned response, that is wisdom. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Even obstacles are transformed when the mind is disciplined. Picture a Roman soldier trembling on the eve of battle, terrified of what might come. He approaches the emperor, desperate for reassurance. Marcus does not promise him safety or victory. Instead, he tells him that while the battle's outcome is uncertain, the courage with which he faces it is entirely his to command. The soldier leaves not guaranteed of survival, but strengthened with the knowledge that no matter what comes, his mind is his own. So it must be with us. Inner peace does not depend on the silence of the world, but on the stillness of the soul. Chaos may rage outside, but inside you can be calm. Insults may fly, disasters may strike, but inside you can be steady. This is the first step to true freedom, to live no longer at the mercy of what you cannot control, but to stand sovereign over the only kingdom that has ever truly been yours, the kingdom of your own mind. Life is short. Marcus Aurelius returned to this truth again and again, for he knew that nothing unsettles the mind more than the illusion that we have time without end. He looked at the empire stretched before him, the wealth of Rome, the marble palaces, the countless legions under his command, and he reminded himself, none of this can prevent death. None of this guarantees tomorrow. Each morning he woke with the awareness that this could be his last. Far from depressing him, this thought filled him with urgency, clarity, and peace. "You could leave life right now," he wrote. "Let that determine what you do and say and think." These words are not a call to despair, but a call to live. To live not later, not someday, not when conditions are perfect, but now. For how many of us live as if life is an endless rehearsal? We put off our dreams, delay forgiveness, postpone joy, telling ourselves that there will be time. But time is not ours to command. We cannot summon tomorrow. We can only inhabit this fleeting, fragile moment. Marcus himself had no shortage of reminders. The Antonine Plague swept through the empire during his reign, claiming the lives of millions. Even in the palace, death was never far. He lost children of his own, felt grief in the deepest places of his heart, and yet he returned again to philosophy, to this acceptance that life's brevity is not a curse, but a guide. By remembering death, he cherished life more fiercely. Think of how differently we might live if we truly grasped this. Imagine you are walking down a busy street. Around you, people hurry by, eyes glued to screens, thoughts tangled in future plans. But if you could hear the clock of mortality ticking above each head, how trivial most of those worries would appear. That small insult you carry, that missed opportunity, that restless envy, they would shrink to nothing. What would matter instead is how you spent your precious breath. Did you live with courage? Did you love with honesty? Did you speak truth while you had the chance? To embrace mortality is to awaken to urgency. It is to see that procrastination is theft, not of time itself, but of the life you could be living now. Marcus reminded himself not to waste hours in idle talk or empty pursuits. He knew that to live as if life were endless is to squander it, but to remember its fragility is to infuse each day with meaning. There is an exercise the Stoics practiced, and you can practice it too. Each morning, pause and reflect. This day is not guaranteed. If it were my last, how would I live it? And each evening, before you close your eyes, ask, if death came to me tonight, have I lived today as a human being should, justly, courageously, wisely? These are not questions to breed fear, but to sharpen your focus, to draw you into the present moment, where life actually resides. Marcus did not simply contemplate death, he used it as a compass. When tempted by vanity, he would remember that applause fades to dust. When tempted by anger, he would remind himself that both he and his enemy were fleeting shadows, soon gone from the earth. When tempted by despair, he would see that even sorrow must pass, as all things pass. Mortality humbled him, but it also freed him. For what is there to fear when you have already accepted the one certainty? Picture him writing by lamplight, the empire heavy on his shoulders, yet his thoughts fixed not on power or legacy, but on how to meet the present moment with dignity. In this way, he teaches us that peace does not come by ignoring death, but by befriending it. To live in denial of mortality is to live in constant anxiety, always haunted by what we push away. To live in acceptance of mortality is to live liberated, grateful for each breath, anchored in what truly matters. Our modern world is built on distraction, on convincing us that life is endless, that tomorrow is promised. But Marcus cuts through illusion. He tells us that by remembering our end, we awaken to our beginning. We step into life with both feet, no longer spectators, but participants, alive to every fleeting hour. This is the second lesson for inner peace, to carry death not as a burden, but as a lantern, to let its light reveal the preciousness of today, and to live each moment as if it were both your first and your last, for in truth, it always is. Marcus Aurelius understood that human beings are not isolated creatures. We are born into a world where our lives are bound together like threads in a vast tapestry. To live only for oneself is to pull against the fabric of existence, to weaken both the whole and the individual. He wrote, "What's not good for the hive is not good for the bee." In this simple line lies a profound truth. Our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the larger community. Peace does not flourish in selfishness, it grows in service. As emperor, Marcus could have lived detached from the struggles of ordinary men. He could have surrounded himself with luxury, cut off from hardship, letting others bear the weight of suffering. But instead, he chose differently. He often slept in the camps among his soldiers, ate their food, endured the same cold winds, the same mud, the same fatigue. By living with them, he showed that he was not above them. He was one of them. This was more than leadership. It was philosophy in action. By serving the whole, Marcus found his own peace. Contrast this with the modern world, where so often we are told to look inward only for ourselves, to chase personal ambition, wealth, and recognition. We are told that fulfillment comes from climbing higher than others, from securing more than others, from proving ourselves against others. But this pursuit leaves us hollow. No matter how high we climb, no matter how much we accumulate, peace remains elusive if it is built only on the fragile foundation of self. Marcus points us to a greater truth, that joy and tranquility arise when we see ourselves as part of something larger and live for the good of that whole. Think of the hive. Each bee works not for its own survival alone, but for the collective. It gathers nectar, builds, defends, not in isolation, but as part of the community. And in serving the hive, the bee also secures its own life. So too with us. When we serve our family, our community, our society, we find ourselves strengthened, connected, and at peace. When we withdraw into selfishness, chasing only our own gain, we become restless, dissatisfied, disconnected. Marcus himself wrestled with betrayal, with treachery in the Senate, with people who sought only their own advantage. Yet he returned to the same principle, to live for the common good. He reminded himself daily that his role was not to be adored, not to indulge in pleasures, but to fulfill his duty. He saw himself as a servant of Rome, of the greater order of nature itself. This was his anchor in the storm of power. In our own lives, we may not command armies or govern nations, but we too are called to serve. Service can be as simple as kindness to a stranger, patience with a child, honesty in our work, or generosity with our time. It can be as quiet as listening when someone needs to be heard, or as bold as standing for justice when others remain silent. Each act that contributes to the greater good brings us closer to the harmony Marcus sought. When we serve others, something shifts inside us. Our personal anxieties, our restless worries lose their grip. By turning our attention outward, we dissolve the prison of self-absorption. Peace comes not from constant self-concern, but from recognizing our place in the larger whole. Just as Marcus found strength among his soldiers, so too can we find strength in our families, our communities, our causes. Ask yourself, what hive do you serve? Are you living only for yourself, or are you contributing to something greater? The answer to this question determines not only the quality of your character, but also the depth of your peace. For selfishness breeds isolation, and isolation breeds unrest. But service unites, and in unity the soul finds rest. This is the fourth lesson: to see beyond the narrow confines of self, to recognize that our life gains meaning when it is tied to the good of others. In serving the whole, we do not lose ourselves. We discover ourselves. And in that discovery, we find a peace that no private ambition could ever give. Now the question falls to you. What will you do with these lessons? Will you let them drift past, like words you hear and forget, or will you take them into the marrow of your life and let them shape who you become? Philosophy is not meant to be admired from a distance. It is meant to be lived. Marcus Aurelius did not write his meditations to impress others. He wrote them as reminders to himself of how to live each day with integrity and calm. In the same way, these words only come alive when you put them into practice. So I offer you a challenge. For the next 7 days, walk with Marcus Aurelius. Each morning, before the day pulls you into its noise, pause for a moment of reflection. Remind yourself of what lies in your control and what does not. Ask yourself, will I waste this day, or will I use it well, remembering that life is short? As the hours unfold, keep the compass of virtue before you. When anger rises, choose patience. When temptation calls, choose temperance. When fear whispers, choose courage. When confusion clouds you, choose wisdom. Each day, look for a chance to serve. A kind word, a patient gesture, an act of generosity, however small. These are not just for others, they are nourishment for your own soul. And when events come that you did not choose, when plans unravel, when disappointments strike, practice acceptance. Do not ask, why me? But instead, how can I meet this with dignity? At night, close the day as Marcus did, with reflection. Look honestly at how you lived, not to condemn yourself, but to grow. 7 days of this discipline will not make you perfect, but it will begin to open your eyes. You will feel the weight of life differently. You will begin to see how much of your unrest comes not from the world, but from your own thoughts, and how much freedom lies in mastering them. You will taste a peace that is not dependent on success or comfort, but on alignment with wisdom. And if you continue beyond 7 days, you will see that this peace is not fragile, it endures. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. That is the heart of this path. To live in such a way that the noise of the world loses its grip on you. To find strength not in control over others, but in control over yourself. To live each day as if it were your last, and to meet it with virtue, service, and acceptance." So I ask you again, what will you do with these lessons? Will you drift, or will you stand? Will you be tossed by every wave, or will you learn, as Marcus did, to be the calm within the storm? The choice is yours. And if you choose to walk this path, to live these truths, you will discover a secret that emperors and beggars alike may share. That inner peace is not a dream, not a gift, but a discipline. It is yours to claim, and it begins now.